The wine was white. She always said she hated white wine. Said it gave her headaches, made her flush too red. But there she was, swirling it in her glass like she'd been doing it all her life. Eyes locked on him across the dance floor. And me? I was sitting exactly 15 feet away, pretending not to watch her forget every single thing she once said only to me. I wasn't supposed to be there, by the way. She told me it was a work-only party. No plus ones. Too corporate, she said. It's better if you skip it. I'll be home late. But I got curious, not the fun, playful kind of curious. The sick-to-your-stomach kind. So I asked a favor from someone in catering who owed me a favor from way back. I got in. No one noticed me. She definitely didn't. She had her hair up, not the messy bun she wears on grocery runs, but the slick, twisted kind that says, "Look at me, but don't touch." Her dress was new. Black velvet, slid high, dangerously close to a kind of confidence I hadn't seen on her in over a year. And she wasn't wearing her ring. Let me repeat that. She was not wearing her ring. Now Lane, yes, him, was pouring her a second glass. She laughed too loud, touched his chest like she was steadying herself, but they both knew she wasn't stumbling. She was floating. I had a decision to make right there. Walk out. Let the silence eat me up again like it had been doing for months. Or step into the spotlight and set the whole thing on fire. So I waited for the perfect moment. One song ended. Another started. Something slow, sultry, and like a magnet, they found each other again. His hand found her waist. Her eyes fluttered. She leaned in. I walked toward them slowly. Not angry, not shaking, just tired. So unbelievably tired. And when I was close enough to smell the wine on her breath, I said it. One more dance with him, and I'm out. That's all it takes. She froze, blinked, looked at me like I'd just dropped from the ceiling. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. And then, God help me, she smiled. Turned back to him. And the music kept playing. So I walked away. And her choice changed everything. I didn't rush out of the party. I didn't storm through the doors or knock over a table on my way out like some betrayed movie husband. No, I walked. Slowly. Past the buffet table with the untouched shrimp cocktail. Past the intern in the corner who was drunk off 2 glasses of something sparkling and trying to hide a tear. Past the marketing guy bragging about his Tesla lease like he invented electricity. I walked right through the place like a ghost no one could see, even though my heart was practically screaming. I wasn't even outside yet when I heard it, not even trying to eavesdrop, but some things just fly straight into your ears like they were aimed there. A group of women, a little tipsy, just outside the powder room. One of them said, "So Lane finally wore her down, huh?" The others laughed. Another one chimed in, "She always said married men were off limits. Guess she made an exception when it got boring at home." I stopped walking. They didn't know I was there. I don't even think they knew my name. Just the husband. The accessory Maura used to wear. And now? I was something she outgrew. I stepped outside, into the cold air that hit my lungs like a slap. I don't smoke, never have, but right then I wished I did. I needed something to do with my hands, something to put between me and that building. I stood on the sidewalk like I was waiting for a ride I hadn't called. My mind just kept looping that moment, returning back to him like I wasn't even real. I thought about calling my brother. He's the kind of guy who would have told me to walk back in there and flip a table, grab the mic from the DJ and make a speech. But I wasn't built like that. I've always been the quieter one, the thinker. The one who waits and hopes it's all in his head, even when it obviously isn't. And it wasn't just tonight. There were signs. So many signs I ignored. Like last month, when she forgot our anniversary dinner. Said it slipped her mind. I told her it was okay, that she was busy. Then I caught a glimpse of her planner on the kitchen counter the next morning. She'd marked a wine tasting that night, with a heart next to it. Or how she started showering at strange times, always late, after checking her phone for a few minutes in the hallway, always with a faint smirk on her lips like she had her own little secret comedy show going on in her head. Or the one time I tried to surprise her at her office with lunch, and the receptionist said she was out for a long lunch meeting except I could see her car in the lot. Windows fogged up. Yeah, I had all the puzzle pieces. I just refused to see the picture. Back to the sidewalk. I was about to call a cab, just give up, and go sleep in the back room of the repair shop, when the building's back door creaked open. I turned instinctively, half hoping it was her chasing after me, realizing her mistake, tears in her eyes like those fake redemption movies. But it wasn't her. It was him. Lane. Jacket off, sleeves rolled up, like he was the star of some romantic drama. He didn't see me right away. Pulled out his phone, laughed at a message, And then, you're not going to believe this, he took a selfie. In front of the city skyline. Smiling like a man who had just won something. I should have walked away. I should have kept my mouth shut. But instead, I stepped out of the shadow and said, "Congratulations. You finally got what you wanted." He didn't even flinch. Just glanced at me and said, "Hey man, this really isn't personal." Not personal. Not personal. My entire marriage was now considered some side mission he completed with bonus points, and I was supposed to just accept it as nothing personal? But I didn't scream. Didn't punch him. I just nodded like an idiot and said, "You're right. It's not." Then I turned and left. And still, despite everything, I hoped she'd come home. I hoped she'd text. I hoped there was an explanation, something, anything I missed. But she didn't. And what happened the next morning shattered any sliver of hope I was still dumb enough to carry. I got home around midnight, but I didn't go inside right away. I sat in the car like a coward, engine off, hands on the steering wheel like I was still deciding whether to drive somewhere else, anywhere else. There's this weird thing that happens when you know something's broken beyond repair, but your heart hasn't caught up yet. You still hold the key and hope that maybe, just maybe, the lock will work one more time. When I finally went inside, everything was too quiet. The kind of silence that feels suspicious. There was no music playing like she usually had after parties, no sound of heels on the hardwood, not even the clink of a wine glass. Just air still and cold and waiting. I walked through the kitchen. Her keys were there. Her purse. Her coat. She was home. But the lights were off. I went upstairs. Slowly. I didn't want to catch her doing anything, if that makes sense. I didn't want confirmation. I didn't want to see something that would dig a permanent hole into my memory. I don't know. I hoped, even now, she'd be asleep, alone, and everything would be explainable somehow. She wasn't in bed. The sheets on her side were smooth, untouched, like they'd been made an hour ago and no one had dared disturb them. Her phone was gone. Her wedding ring, usually left on the nightstand, was missing. I sat down on my side of the bed, still in the same clothes from the party, and just stared at the place where she should have been. I must have dozed off at some point, because I woke up to the sound of the front door opening. It was almost 3 a.m. I stayed upstairs, listening. Her steps were light, too light, like she was trying not to be heard. I knew that walk. That careful, guilty walk of someone who hopes they can rewrite the truth by staying quiet enough. I didn't go down. I let her come to me. Eventually, she climbed the stairs, paused outside the bedroom like she wasn't sure if I'd be there, and then walked in. I didn't say anything. I just sat there in the dark. She didn't even jump when she saw me. She just sighed, as if I was the one making things difficult. She took off her shoes, set them down gently, walked to her side of the bed and started pulling off her earrings, one by one, without saying a word. "You didn't come after me," she finally said. That was her opening line. I blinked at her in disbelief. "You didn't give me a reason to." She shrugged. "I didn't think you'd really leave. I thought you were bluffing." I let out this bitter laugh I didn't know I had in me. "So you chose him? Right there. In front of me." She didn't deny it. She didn't apologize. She just sat down at her vanity and started wiping off her lipstick with the kind of calm you use after a long shift at work, like nothing about tonight had been particularly meaningful. I stood up. I couldn't sit there anymore. My skin was crawling. "Is this it, Maura? Are you going to pretend this isn't happening?" She looked at me in the mirror and said, "You always see things in black and white. Life doesn't work that way." I stared at her reflection. That cold, polished version of the woman I once loved so completely it hurt. I asked one last question. "Did you sleep with him?" She didn't flinch. Didn't blink. She just smiled, that same smug, condescending smile she'd given me at the party. "I don't think that's the right question," she said. I felt the floor shift under me, like reality itself had started to slip sideways. "Then what is the right question?" She turned in her chair, finally facing me full on, crossed her legs slowly, and said, "Ask me why I didn't stop." That was when I knew. Whatever marriage we had was gone. Not because of the affair, no. Because she didn't care. There was no remorse. No fear of losing me. Just a woman who had already left, even if her body still lived in my house. I packed a bag that night. Not because I had anywhere to go, but because I knew if I stayed another hour in that house, I'd become something I didn't want to be. Bitter. Angry. Broken. I didn't leave a note. I didn't yell. I just walked out. But what happened next, the phone call I got the next day, and what I found when I came back, that's when things really spiraled into madness. And I'm not exaggerating. You won't believe what she did next. I didn't sleep that night, not even a minute. I drove around aimlessly until the sun rose behind the trees like nothing had happened, like the world didn't just come apart in slow motion. The bag I packed stayed on the passenger seat, untouched. I couldn't bring myself to go to my brother's or a hotel. I just kept driving in loops. Old neighborhoods, past gas stations we used to stop at on road trips. Even through the alley behind her office, like some sad private investigator trying to find leftover truth. Around 9 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text. From her. No words, just a photo. I hesitated to open it. But curiosity is cruel when you've been betrayed. So I tapped. The photo showed my wedding ring. Not lost. Not forgotten. It was framed. In a shadow box. With a tiny label beneath it that said the cost of expectations. At first, I didn't get it. I thought maybe it was some Pinterest joke. Some twisted symbolism. Then I noticed something even more disturbing. The background wasn't her vanity or our house. It was a desk I didn't recognize. I stared at the photo until I realized it was taken at his place. Lane's place. That ring, my ring, was now sitting on a desk in his apartment like a trophy. Like a statement. I was still gripping my phone when the second message came. I figured you'd want to know where it ended up. I felt like vomiting. I didn't even think. I drove straight back to the house. I knew she'd be at work by then. I didn't care. I needed to be in that space one last time, not to make peace with it, but to burn the illusion out of my brain. I needed to see the mess I'd ignored for too long. When I opened the front door, it didn't feel like my home anymore. Everything felt colder, sharper. Like even the furniture was uncomfortable with what had happened between its walls. But here's where things turned truly insane. There was a suitcase by the door. Hers. Half-packed. And next to it, another bag. One I didn't recognize. Not mine. Not hers. Inside were a pair of sneakers, a hoodie, a phone charger, and God help me, a toothbrush. Someone had been staying there. I ran upstairs. Pulled open the guest room door. The sheets were wrinkled. Fresh towel on the hook. The smell of cheap cologne. Lane had been in my house. Maybe even while I was sleeping in the next room during the last few weeks. Maybe while I made her coffee. Maybe while I folded her damn laundry and waited for her to laugh again like she used to. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, breathing so hard I thought I'd pass out. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. Everything around me was evidence, subtle, disgusting evidence of how deeply I'd been replaced. But the worst part? On the nightstand in that guest room was a little black notebook. One Maura had always used to jot ideas for her marketing pitches. I'd seen it for years. I opened it, hands trembling. Inside were notes. Pages and pages. But not work stuff. No. These were bullet points, lists, ideas, scenarios, all titled with one heading. Life without Darwin. Plans for moving out. Plans for how to tell her family. Even rough drafts of a speech to friends about how they'd grown apart peacefully. She'd been preparing. For months. Crafting her exit like a business pitch, polishing her betrayal like it was a brand strategy. I closed the notebook and just sat there. Not crying. Not yelling. Just empty. Like someone had hollowed me out and left the shell behind to carry the groceries. And then the door creaked open downstairs. Footsteps. Not hers. Lane. He walked in, humming. I could hear him setting something on the counter, like he was preparing to cook in my kitchen. I didn't move. I didn't call out. I just waited. Let him move through the house like it was already his. And when he finally came to the foot of the stairs, I stood at the top, staring down. Our eyes met. He stopped humming. His face froze. I said nothing. I didn't have to. Because what he saw in my expression, it wasn't rage. It wasn't tears. It was clarity. And that scared him more than anything I could have shouted. After Lane left, and yes, he left without a word, without taking that smug cologne-soaked hoodie or his toothbrush, I just stood there in the hallway like the air itself had changed. Like I'd crossed into some alternate version of my own life where nothing made sense anymore, but somehow I still had to keep breathing in it. That's the strangest part of betrayal. The world doesn't pause for it. The sun still shines. Your neighbors still take their trash out. People still ask you how your weekend was. But inside, you're rotting. Quietly. I should have walked away, taken my bag and disappeared. But something kept me in that house. Maybe stubbornness, maybe stupidity. Or maybe I just needed to finish it. To pull every last rotten thread until there was no illusion left to hide behind. I don't know what exactly led me to her computer. It wasn't a plan. I hadn't even touched it in years. She worked on it daily, obsessively, and kept it password protected. But I'd seen her type it in once last fall. Muscle memory's a weird thing. I tried the word, Callisto. Some fancy skincare brand she used to rave about. It worked. The screen unlocked like a secret door opening. At first, it was normal. Desktop cluttered with work documents, marketing decks, and folders labeled with dates and client codes. She had built her own little world here, one I was never invited into. But I didn't care about her projects or her brand strategy. I wanted to know when it started, why, and how deep it went. So I opened her email. She used her personal Gmail for the things she didn't want connected to her company. That was the first red flag. I clicked into her inbox, expecting to feel guilty, but I didn't. Not even a flicker. The truth demands sacrifices. Privacy is just another thing you give up when someone erases you. And what I found wasn't just infidelity. It was architecture. She had built an entire parallel life with Lane, brick by brick, email by email, and I hadn't seen any of it. There were hundreds. Not a few flirtatious exchanges. Hundreds. The first one was dated 10 months ago. Subject: I liked our talk. Short. Sweet. Non-committal. Then it escalated. Weeks of coded jokes. Inside references. List of things they wanted to do when the time was right. And then came the real punches: scanned hotel receipts, dinner reservations in other cities, business trips that never made it onto her company calendar. But the worst wasn't the logistics. The worst was the tone. They laughed at me. Repeatedly. She called me domestic wallpaper. Said I had the emotional depth of a houseplant. Said I was so dependable it was almost tragic. He replied with things like, bet he folds your socks too, and tell him you're working late again. Poor guy. They made jokes about my Sunday night chili, my habit of leaving sticky notes with dumb encouragements on the fridge, my quiet, my loyalty. The things I thought made me a decent husband to them, those were punchlines. One email, dated just 2 weeks ago, was titled, "He's still here." And all it said was, "I swear, Lane, he's like a ghost that doesn't get the hint." I sat back in the chair, completely still, and stared at that line like it was alive. I wanted to scream, to break something, to wake up and discover this was just a sick dream wrapped in a foggy hangover. But no, this was real. This was her. Then I opened the folder labeled Next Phase. She was planning to move out. Not with guilt. With celebration. She'd made spreadsheets. Outlined timelines. She had a list of people she'd break the news to in order of how useful they'll be emotionally. That was her actual phrasing. Not how hurt they'll be. Not how to be gentle. Just how useful. I realized then I wasn't a person to her anymore. I was a utility. A stage of life. A stability she'd used as scaffolding until she could swing to the next branch. But here's where it gets insane. There was a draft email she never sent. One that wasn't for Lane. One that was addressed to me. Subject: when you finally wake up. Body: Darvin. If you're reading this, it means the house of cards has collapsed. I didn't want to hurt you, but I also didn't want to lie anymore. Maybe you saw it coming. Maybe you didn't. But know this, I loved you once. Deeply. Just not lately. Please don't make this uglier than it has to be. We're adults. Let's be gracious. I'll leave quietly if that's what you want. I just hope you understand that staying would have killed me slowly. She painted herself as the victim, as if cheating and planning a full-scale emotional evacuation was noble. I shut the laptop. I felt like I'd been punched through the ribs, like I'd been scraped out of my own life. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. I just knew I couldn't be her exit plan anymore. I wouldn't be the passive footnote in her new chapter. But I also didn't want to destroy her, not yet. I wanted something better, something more final. And the opportunity to do just that came quicker than I could have imagined. Because just 2 days later, she threw a party of her own, her freedom party, I guess. And I made sure it was one she'd never forget. She thought I didn't know. That was the part that made it almost funny. She thought she could pull off a secret farewell celebration with her friends, her circle, as she called them, to toast her next chapter, while I vanished quietly into the past like some outdated subscription. I wasn't supposed to know about the party. I wasn't even supposed to be in town anymore. But what Maura never understood was this. Even the quiet ones take notes. It was Lane's sister who tipped me off. Completely by accident. She came into the shop needing her laptop fixed. I've met her once before, at some company barbecue where Maura made me carry the cooler. She didn't recognize me at first. Most people don't when I'm not standing next to Maura. But after some small talk, she mentioned, "You going to the goodbye bash Saturday night? Sounds like a riot." I played dumb. "What bash?" She paused, visibly uncomfortable. Uh, Nothing. Just something Mora and Lane are throwing. You probably already know. Forget I said anything. I smiled. Of course. Yeah. Must have slipped my mind. She left. I locked the door early that day. Saturday came. I didn't spend hours prepping. No dramatic outfit. No big speech rehearsed in the mirror. I didn't want revenge, not the messy kind. I wanted recognition. I wanted her to see me in the one moment she assumed I was finally gone. Not broken. Not pleading. Just there. And finished. The party was at some rooftop bar downtown, same chain that catered her boss's promotion event. Ironic, right? The setting of my humiliation became the scene of her downfall. I didn't walk in through the front entrance. I waited. I watched from a spot across the street until I saw enough faces arrive, all of them smiling, all of them unknowingly celebrating the success of a woman who had silently annihilated a marriage. Then I slipped in through the service stairwell. One of the bartenders owed me a favor. I'd fixed his gaming console for free after his ex stole the charger and scratched the screen with a key. People remember generosity when it's quiet. When I came up, the music was thumping, the city lights were glittering in the background, and Mora was right in the middle of it all, wearing a low-cut emerald dress like she was auditioning for a new life. Lane was beside her, drink in hand, already too confident. I stood at the edge of the rooftop for maybe 10 minutes before anyone noticed. Then it happened. Her friend Tess spotted me. Her eyes went wide, mouth open. She whispered something into Mora's ear. Mora turned and froze. The room didn't fall silent like in the movies. The music kept going. The chatter around me didn't pause, but her expression, that was the silence. That was the drop. I stepped forward. No rush. No anger. Just purpose. She opened her mouth, probably to lie, to soften, to twist, but I raised my hand, just enough to stop her. And then, without breaking eye contact, I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the envelope. White. Thick. Her name written in my cleanest handwriting. I handed it to her in front of everyone. You dropped this, I said. Calm. Polite. She blinked. What is it? A souvenir. She opened it. Inside were two things. A printed photo of my wedding ring sitting in Lane's apartment, the one she'd so proudly sent me, and a USB drive. She looked at me, suddenly pale. It's all there, I said. Your emails. Your plans. The notebook entries. The jokes. The hotel receipts. All of it. I didn't erase a thing. Lane shifted, visibly nervous now. You went through her stuff? I turned to him. You slept in my guest room, man. Let's not talk boundaries. That drew a few looks. A few gasps. Tess even stepped back. Mora tried to recover. Darvin, this isn't the time. This is exactly the time. You threw a party for your new life. Thought I should RSVP. I didn't stay long after that. I didn't need to. I walked out with my head high. Not because I won anything. There was no winning in this. But because I left the wreckage exactly where it belonged, in her hands. But what happened afterward? That was unexpected. 2 days later, I got a call from her boss. Then from Lane's firm. And finally, from Mora. The consequences were bigger than I imagined. And not just for them. The Monday after the party, I woke up late. No alarm, no obligations. Just the sound of the neighbor's dog barking and the gentle hum of a world that had no idea how badly mine had just been flipped inside out. I didn't know what to expect after what I did. I wasn't thinking ahead when I handed her that envelope. It wasn't part of some grand plan. I just wanted her to know that I knew. I wanted to look her in the eye and hand her the truth she thought I was too soft, too stupid, too small to ever find. But apparently, that envelope had teeth. The first call came just before noon. I was sipping reheated coffee, staring at the ceiling, when my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, so I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, another call came. This time, I answered. Is this Darvin? The man asked, brisk and professional. Yes. My name is Grant Langford. I'm with Pendleton Pharmaceuticals. I'm Mora's employer. My stomach tightened. I hadn't contacted them. I hadn't sent anything beyond what I gave Mora directly. But apparently, I didn't have to. Someone else had. Probably Tess. Or Lane's sister. Or maybe one of the guests at the party who saw the USB drive and got curious. Either way, it had spread faster than I could have imagined. Mr. Langford continued. We've received some files that require internal investigation. I'm reaching out to confirm whether you're the source. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just said, everything on that drive is real. He exhaled sharply. Then I imagine we'll be following up shortly. Click. That wasn't even the part that rattled me. A few hours later, another call came in. This time, it was Lane's company. They'd received a copy too. Not just the emails, but the receipts, the photographs, the timestamps, and more importantly, a few of those business trips he'd gone on with Maura. He'd billed them to the company through fake invoices, which was now being treated as fraud. Apparently, my little souvenir had kicked off a firestorm. By Tuesday afternoon, Maura had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Lane's department had been put under audit. And by Wednesday, I started receiving calls from people I hadn't spoken to in years, old mutual friends, even a cousin of hers, all wanting to know if what they heard was true. And I told them, calmly, that I wasn't interested in gossip, that they could ask Maura, or better yet, just stay out of it. But here's the part that shook me more than any of that corporate fallout. On Thursday evening, 4 days after the rooftop party, Maura showed up at the repair shop. I saw her through the glass door before she even stepped inside. She wasn't dressed up. No emerald dress. No makeup. Just jeans, sneakers, and a loose gray sweater I vaguely remembered giving her for a birthday she barely acknowledged. She looked like a storm that had rained itself out. I wanted to tell her to leave, but I didn't. I unlocked the door and let her in. She didn't say anything at first. She just looked around the shop, at the tools, the boxes of old parts, the faint scent of solder and worn rubber. Then she looked at me. "Everything's falling apart," she said. I nodded. "Yeah, it tends to do that when the lies run out." She lowered her gaze. "I didn't think it would go this far." "You mean consequences?" She flinched like I slapped her. And for a moment, I saw the Maura I used to know. The one who cried watching sappy movies. The one who once held my hand so tightly at her father's funeral I thought she might break it. But that Maura was buried under too many layers now. Layers of manipulation, layers of indifference, layers of control. "I didn't come here to fix it," she said quietly. "I just wanted you to know. I never hated you." "Good," I replied. "Because I don't hate you either." That seemed to surprise her. She blinked. "You don't?" "No. You don't hate the wallpaper. You just repaint the room." She bit her lip, holding back tears. "I made you feel invisible. You didn't make me feel anything. You just confirmed it." Silence. Then, finally, the thing I'd been waiting to hear. Not for closure, but for honesty. "I think I destroyed the only good thing I ever had," she said. I didn't respond. I just stood there, arms crossed, heart heavy. Because I knew she wasn't saying that for me. She was saying it for herself. To ease the guilt. To build a bridge back to her self-worth. I didn't offer comfort. I didn't forgive. I just nodded toward the door. "Take care of yourself, Maura." She left. And just like that, the chapter ended. But there's still one part left. One twist neither of us saw coming. Something I discovered days later that changed the way I thought about the entire thing, even about myself. A week after Maura walked out of the shop, I received a letter. Not an email, not a text. A real letter, handwritten, in blue ink, the way she used to write love notes back when we still believed in forever. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. I don't know why I hesitated. Maybe because part of me worried she'd try to twist the story one more time. Or maybe I just wasn't ready to see how she'd put her final stamp on what we were. But the letter, it surprised me. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't manipulative. It was, for the first time in what felt like years, honest. She admitted to everything, the affair, the manipulation, the way she dismissed me. She didn't justify any of it. She didn't ask for sympathy. Instead, she told me I had every right to be angry. That she didn't leave me because I failed, but because she couldn't face her own failures. That Lane was just a mirror she clung to because she hated her reflection. And at the end, she wrote something I didn't expect. "I hope you don't let me be the reason you stop loving people. You deserved someone who saw you in full color. I saw it too late. But I did see it. I hope someone else sees it from the start." I folded the letter carefully and put it in a drawer, not to keep, but to bury. I didn't need it anymore. The chapter had been closed the moment she turned back to him on the dance floor. This letter just confirmed what I already knew. But here's the part one promised you, the twist. After everything, after all the mess, after all the unraveling of a life I spent years building, I finally started seeing things differently. And it started with something so small I almost missed it. It was a customer. A woman. She came into the shop with a shattered phone, clearly frustrated. She looked tired, the kind of tired that only heartbreak or parenting brings. She apologized 3 times for rambling and once for being a mess. But I listened. I asked her what had happened. She told me her kid had thrown the phone into the bathtub during a tantrum. Said it had been a week from hell. I told her not to worry. I could fix it. She smiled. A real smile. The kind that doesn't come from politeness, but from the relief of being understood, even by a stranger. Her name was Elena. She came back the next day to pick up her phone. We talked again. Not long. Not dramatically. Just long enough to laugh at something dumb I said and thank me for being kind. Then she started coming by more often. Sometimes with another repair, sometimes just to say hello. And one day, she brought coffee. "You look like someone who forgets to drink it hot," she said. She was right. We started having lunches together, sitting in the park down the street. Nothing serious. No pressure. Just two people who'd been through their own wreckage quietly choosing not to be alone anymore. And here's the most important thing. I never told her the full story. Not yet. Not because I'm hiding it, but because, for once, I don't need someone to rescue me from my past. I just want to build something slow, real, from the ground up. Maura taught me something she never intended to, that love built on silence collapses in noise. But love built on being seen, really seen, has a chance to last. So no, I'm not bitter anymore. I'm not broken. I'm not wallpaper. I'm not a ghost. I'm just starving. And I'm still here.